Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel.
Welcome back to a little bit of Total War Warhammer. We're continuing along. This is our second set of matches in this tournament, and we're playing as Chaos. We're up against Thanqol, who is a newer player, so don't judge him too roughly here. He is doing something, I think, a little bit different. He's trying out something a little bit unique here, but we've got ourselves our front lineup of the Forsaken here. And again, we're not necessarily trying to win these. We're just trying to do the best that we can with things that we might not normally take. And I didn't go as overboard with these as I could have, but I actually took a bunch of Marauder Horsemen in this match. And I want to sort of see if I can make these guys work out for me. These guys normally aren't taken that much. The ones with Axis get sometimes taken if you need armor piercing for some reason. And they make good armor piercing flankers to a certain extent, just because they're fast enough to get around there, unlike, say, Chaos Warriors with great weapons. But even then, you would probably want to use Marauders with great weapons. So we've got two of them. We've got one of these Chaos Warhounds. We've got two of these Chaos Warriors with halberds, just as flank security. We've got 3 units of Chaos Warriors with great weapons, Chaos Sorcerer with lower fire, and Chaos Lord. So we're using what we've learned from previous games in this game as well. We're up against a shitload of Goblins with rank 9 veterancy. They've got the Night Goblin Shaman, Orc Warboss over here, 2 units of Trolls, the Arachnarok Spider, and a Goblin Rocklobber. So he's going for a very Goblin-themed army here that essentially is going to try and just hold me up and actually overwhelm me with the Goblins, who do well against certain units, more so than you would expect them to be able to do. But they're not necessarily that reliable, and they can't necessarily win against more tough units, more elite units, even though they've got those jacked up statistics. The Trolls, however, can swing some of those fights in his favor, as can, of course, the Arachnarok Spider, which can really dramatically swing some of these fights in his favor. These Forsaken would get shredded up really quickly by the Spider. They don't have much answer to it. I'm just running forward with this unit of Hounds. I've only got the one since I took a couple of units of Marauder Horsemen instead of taking more of them. But we're charging across the field against these Forsaken here, with these Forsaken here up against these Goblins. They move so much faster than the rest of my lines that I'm going to collide with the Goblins quite a bit earlier with my Forsaken than I am with the rest of my army, so that's perfectly fine though. And this sort of slam in charge, of course, is going to deal pretty horrific damage to him, because even though he's got increased statistics and everything like that, Goblins don't really have the best charge defense, and they don't really have the best charge, so huge casualties start rolling in very, very quickly. That's not necessarily going to matter though, because his morale is actually quite okay. Arachnarok Spider is going to run on into this combat, and I'm going to start running into that combat with these Chaos Warriors with halberds, but I'm also going to run flank security with these Chaos Warriors with great weapons. They're not a great choice against Goblins with all that veterancy, but they'll do. Over here, we're using our Marauder Horsemen to chuck javelins at these Trolls, and they're not going to do damage that quickly, but I figured if I'm going to have them, this is the role that I'm going to have them for. We're running in a replacement unit for these Forsaken, using this Chaos Warrior with Halberd unit. It'll be able to tank through these units quite well, because they've got good bonuses, of course, against the Trolls. And this unit of Goblins doesn't really matter too much, so they're also quite good against the Orc Warboss. But over here, Goblins managed to beat this unit of Forsaken pretty much, just because that sort of charge petters out a little bit, and we end up breaking through on this side, however. The fight over here, on the other hand, is still going extremely well for my opponent because of this Arachnarok Spider. Chaos Warriors, having more armor than the Forsaken, more hit points and more defense and stuff like that, are tanking through the Goblins' attacks much, much more effectively, and their relative lack of good attack against infantry isn't hurting them as much against these Goblins as it might otherwise. So we're slowly chopping our way through these elite Goblins, and that's really quite good. We are getting shot at by Trebuchet here, which is assisting him quite a bit, but we do break through that line over there. Over here, some Forsaken that broke through. We're going to start looping back around and come back into the rear of these Trolls. And these guys do take a lot of morale damage in these sort of situations. My unit of Halberds, on the other hand, are getting pretty wrecked, partly because of this Orc Warboss, but we do take out both of these Troll units in terms of morale. They are going to still be in the fight, though. Trolls do regenerate, and they do regain their morale. They break very, very early, but they come back pretty quickly, so not going to be the end of that. So over here, we've cleaned up both flanks, essentially, to a certain degree, but his Warboss is still holding strong. I don't really have the infantry over here necessarily that can easily beat his Warboss, just because he can easily disengage with his Warboss. And my Chaos General actually probably loses against an Orc Warboss, although we both sort of got potions. Mine's kind of running off into the wind here to chase down these units. He's going to start fighting trolls. I'm not sure if that's actually a good idea for him, but it keeps them out of my fight, out of the rest of the fight. Start throwing javelins at the Arachnarok Spider. You can see that it's not really doing that much damage to it, but it's every little bit that counts in this sort of fight. And with the halberds doing a pretty good job of causing damage to it, it's taking quite a beating in this fight so far. The only problem, of course, is that I'm also being attacked by these units of goblins, so my halberds aren't really doing the most in this fight that they could. We are getting a unit of Chaos Warriors with great weapons to join in on the fight again, and these units that routed from morale loss are back in the fight a little bit. Some of his units, though, back in the fight to some extent. Goblins coming out of the woodworks. My Chaos Warriors with great weapons forced to fight them instead of the Arachnarok Spider. But in any event, the Arachnarok now is starting to waver. Too much missile fire, too many halberds, and that combination is going to basically seal the doom of the Orc army here. The Orc war boss does eventually get ground down by these halberds and the Forsaken combo. My general, on the other hand, does not really get poked at all by the goblins, who just don't have the armor-piercing damage to deal any damage to him, nor the attack statistic, really. Their attack statistic is 29, which is pretty okay, but it's not enough to get through the 55 melee defense on the Chaos Lord. So, at this point in time, it's pretty much rolled up. There's not really anything left that my opponent can do. So, yeah, it was something new and pretty novel that my opponent was doing there, and I can sort of appreciate that. I'm not sure that I would necessarily ever do this personally, since while they like goblins, I think of them more as a support unit for the rest of your army, and I think they do a pretty good role at that. But you can just look at the number of kills on the Forsaken to sort of get an idea as to what went wrong with this strategy. I think this might be a good strategy against certain factions, but I don't think that Chaos is one of the ones that you would want to do that with. Now, how did the Marauder Horsemen do? I think that they did the role of a ranged unit firing at trolls. You can see that the trolls didn't have the most kills, 22 and 18. Considering they were balled together and fighting things like Forsaken, which normally they take apart if left to their own devices, I think that they got pushed off a lot earlier than they would have if I had not had missile units firing at them that entire time. But once that unit of Forsaken had run off to the hills, they got replaced with a unit of Halberdiers, who do quite well against trolls anyway, and then I recharged them with another unit of Forsaken. So maybe they weren't necessary, maybe they would have died anyway to the Halberd Forsaken combo, but it's hard to say that. They had wavering morale before really they had even attacked that been rear charged, even before they were rear charged. And I think that that was mostly because of damage from these Marauder Horsemen, and also it did good damage against the Arachnarok Spider, which got 70 kills, but it could have definitely been a lot worse had it stuck around longer. So I think that maybe the Marauder Horsemen are okay situationally if they've got those sorts of units to fight against. And Chaos traditionally is an army that's kind of weak against those sorts of things, so I can definitely see them as a counter to that kind of thing. But is it a good counter? Probably not as good as... Okay, welcome to round 2 here. So let's go ahead and show you guys the armies here. We're playing as the Dwarves, which we've got over here. We're playing against the Beastmen. Now, my opponent does end up pulling up a Cygor, so he is going to have the ability to sort of camp up there with his Cygor until I can kill it. This tournament does have a specific rule stating that if you've got artillery, you can hang back. If you do not, you're not allowed to. Now, if both sides have artillery, both are going to hang back, and obviously dwarves are going to be the ones that are going to prefer trying to hang back even if their opponent has artillery. So I have to try and kill his Cygor. He's going to try and kill my infantry. So he's got a unit of Razorgore chariots, he's got 2 of the Minotaurs, he's got 2 Gorbals, he's got Malagor the Dark Omen with most of his abilities stripped out. We've got a bunch of Ungor Spearmen that are in the woods here, and these are actually all Ungor Spearmen. I think he's got something like 10 of them or something like that. A bit of a peculiar choice against dwarves, but it'll work okay in the end for him. Over here, we've got a similar sort of low-tier spammy army. We've got something like 6 or 7 Dwarf Warriors. It looks like it's 6, and then we've got 2 more in the back. We've got 2 units of Longbeards in the back there as well. We've got 3 units of Quarrelers. We're taking out the Iron Drake Trollhammers for a spin. I want to give those guys a go, see how they work. We've got the cannons, and we've got a gyrocopter. We've also got the 3 Thanes, because that worked out quite well from last time, and we've got the Dwarf Lord. So we're actually going to skip ahead quite quickly here for the first little bit. I probably could have been doing this while this happens, but basically what ends up happening, my opponent pulls up the Cygor. I get into a position sort of up on this hill here, and I move my cannon down to check out things out. Now, if I really wanted to do this optimally, I would have just stayed up on this hill on the steepest part of it, brought the cannon into range of his Cygor, and had my guy, my cannon, completely trash his Cygor. He's going to bring this this Razorgore chariot around here to try and just that suicide attack by itself, it'll deal a bit of damage, honestly, but it's not really enough for me to be worried about it. Cygor is chucking some rocks at me pretty well here, and I managed to dodge a couple of them somehow, but we are going to be firing at his Cygor with our cannon, and the cannon does pretty okay damage against this thing, but a Cygor can win against cannons just because, you know, it's not necessarily that easy to hit this guy, where it's pretty easy to hit cannons for some reason. Not really sure why that is. Razorgore Chariot just sort of runs in, gets tagged by the Iron Troll hammers there. He manages to get another rear charge in against some of my units, but by then, pretty much too late. These things really wrecked those guys, so that's a good counter to those Razorgore Chariots. Not that I think you need a counter against Razorgore Chariots, they're pretty trash. Over here, I just decided to fire at the Cygor. I wanted to get rid of it quickly so that my opponent would be forced forward. He's firing at my units, I'm firing at his artillery, and this is going to take a long time. He's able to get a good number of kills with this thing, but not necessarily enough to justify 1,600. Fortunately for him, it's free, so that's one of the problems with this game right now. But I think that Beastmen as a whole could be upgraded significantly if they couldn't get free Cygors. At this point in time, I'm like, okay, well, I think that the cannons can finish this guy off pretty well. I'm going to start picking off some other things. The worst thing in the world would be running out of ammunition on the cannons while firing at the Cygor, but I'm missing a lot of shots here, so maybe I should have kept on it with the gyrocopters. But in any event, we caused some good damage to the Minotaurs. Not really a whole ton, but a couple hundred points is no small amount. I do end up having to move my cannon to get better line of sight here, but it does help out quite a bit, and we end up breaking the Cygor, who is going to run back. We're going to just charge him with our gyrocopters to sort of interrupt him a bit, and he does end up breaking. He's going to try and actually protect his Cygor, which I think is a little bit of a peculiar choice, but he does end up doing that, and he does start moving out with his Ungors. And he's got like 10 units, these guys. Some of them have been bombed, but it's neither here nor there. So at this point in time, my opponent basically decides that he is going to move forward, which, you know, he probably knows that he's going to end up having to be the one that advances on me. But we are going to try and harass his units or get them locked down around here so that my units aren't getting bombarded as badly by this. And also so that these guys don't approach my army, which would be lovely. We're missing a lot of shots in a row against the Cygor. I always have like the worst luck with artillery. Like, it should have been dead like 8 shots ago, but it's still on the exact same number of health as it did when it broke. It's just that every single shot that's come his way since then has missed. You can see them all missing, and there he finally goes down. So anyway, my opponent's just running in with Ungor Raiders. I'm finally moving my units here. I don't really have to worry too much about them, but they do surprisingly well. What's actually more important is the Minotaurs. Now, the Thanes sort of run in the fight here, but the Trollhammer torpedoes do manage to start firing their shots over at these Minotaurs, and it deals really, really good damage to them really quickly. The only problem is I think I'm causing a lot of friendly fire with my Iron Troll torpedoes, but look how fast that shreds a unit like Minotaurs. I think that that's actually a really great unit for that purpose. Now, they have busted through, which means they are going to get into my other units here. We got another few to the face against that Minotaur unit, and they're going to shatter. This other unit here is taking a lot of shots from my crossbowmen, the Corallers. They're going to get some reinforcements from these other units. Now, I'm getting hit by, I think, units that are buffed up with Mantle of Gorok, which is pretty good as far as buffs go. It does deal a lot of damage to you, but it's nothing too strenuous. Now, we got a whole bunch of stuff that managed to break through, following along with the Gorbel Minotaur sort of ball there, which, you know, is kind of okay because my ranged units that are here can actually hold through this sort of thing relatively okay. The problem that I'm going to have is that I've only got one thin line of Dwarf Warriors holding off against these Ungor Spearmen here. We have got plenty here, but that's not really going to be enough to keep us in the fight here necessarily. These Dwarf Warriors and Longbeards, no, those are both Dwarf Warriors, fighting these Ungor Spearherds, doing a pretty good job, but yeah, these Longbeards over here getting kind of surrounded. Gorbel over here and another one over here, both of them have Potion of Healing active, and they're just topping themselves back up. Actually, I'm not sure my opponent was supposed to be allowed to have those, but we'll let it slide for now. It's like 1,077 for each Gorbel with one of those. Malgorst with those spells is like, I can't really remember actually. I think he's over 1,000 though, 1,100. Because he has all his abilities and the crown. Oh yeah, no, they're over. Oh well. I'm not going to worry too much about it, but that's fine. Yeah, these Gorbels, though, I think we're going to be able to just sort of mash through with the combination General and Thane, and some Dwarf Warriors to sort of provide bulk. You've also got these Quarrelers who are going to be firing into the combat against his other Minotaur-type units here. This Minotaur is, like, run into these Dwarf Warriors. It's going to cause some real havoc for me, but ultimately it's not really necessarily enough to swing this fight too badly. It's only 2 of them left after all, so it's not that bad. These Dwarf Warriors running down here to help, since this fight is not necessarily going in my favor. This Thane over here holding strong along with the other 2 Thanes, other Thane, and over here we got these 2 Thanes. Gorbel over here has been getting shot this entire time, so he goes down. This Gorbel just breaks from morale, so this is going to be my opponent's army pretty much gone there. So, yeah, my opponent tried to outcamp me, and he possibly could have forced me forward if he had taken out my cannons instead of firing it at my army. It's kind of boring when both sides do that, but I mean, I don't really begrudge the fact that my opponent did that. It's pretty okay. Iron Drake Trollhammer Torpedoes, I think, are a severely underrated unit in some senses. Like, I know that some people take them, but I think that I need to take them a little bit more against certain compositions and certain armies. They deal huge damage against those large targets. Like, I didn't realize how well they could hit. I was worried that explosives in some other games from Total War tend to overshoot or undershoot targets consistently, like grenade throws, for example, in Empire Total War always overshoot, if I recall correctly, by quite a bit, because they sort of land them a little bit behind your opponent, and then they take a little while to detonate, so they never ever like kill anything that's on the move. They're good against static targets, but how often does that really happen? Not that often. So yeah, I think they're a good unit. I should try them out a little bit more often, maybe try them on ranked games and see if they work out well for me. But anyway, that's this match. Let's go on to the next one. Alright, so this is game 3. We've got ourselves as the Beastmen this time, and he's playing as the Undead this time. We've got ourselves 5 units of Gore Herd up front here. They're followed by 3 Ungore Raiders. We've got ourselves our Gore Bulls, 2 of them. No potions, no abilities. We've got Malagor the Dark Omen, just Devolve and, the Cyclops thing and the Traderkin. And we've got 2 units of Minotaurs, which is the most you're allowed to have, basically. Then we got like 6 Ungore Spear Herds. So this is a pretty standard army. I just didn't feel like doing anything crazy. I couldn't think of anything crazy to do in this situation against this army that would be really that interesting to do. Like, I could have taken double giants or something. I can't actually quite afford double giants. Maybe giants, but yeah, I'm not sure that would be even that interesting, because you know how that goes. Maybe I could have bought a Cygor, see how that works, but I decided not to. He's got the Blood Knights over here, and he's got 2 units of Vargulfs. I think that is fine. I can't really remember. He's got Skeleton Spearmen. I think he's got like 4 of them. And then he's got 4 regular skeletons in the middle there. He's got 2 corpse cards, both of them Unholy Lodestones. He's got Vlad von Karstein as his general. He's got a pair of Crypt Ghouls in the back there. Now, Vampire Counts have really wonky compositions in this tournament because of what's categorized as core. It's mostly just skeletons, zombies, and Crypt Ghouls, so a little bit rougher for them than it normally perhaps would be. Anyway, we're starting to move our way across the fields here towards our opponent. We're sticking mostly to the woods, but we are going to get ready to sort of rush him down. The reason I'm sticking to the woods here is I don't know if there's a bunch of hidden units in this forest here, but yeah, we're just going to move towards our opponent pretty quickly here. Our opponent simultaneously moving his army pretty much right towards us, so that works out pretty well. And yeah, I'm not 100% sure if my opponent needed to take quite this much in core. Yeah, he might have had to take this much. The thing about Undead is that their core units are so cheap that you can take an awful lot of them and it won't even equal 25% of your total. So you end up in a situation where you have to take tons and tons of these weird units that you wouldn't, like, normally people don't take Crypt Ghouls really, which I think is because they're kind of not that great a unit. Now, at this point in time, my opponent is running forward with Blood Knights, so I'm trying to think of, like, do I actually have to do anything about this? At this point in time, I pull up a Cygor. I think that's about now. And so at this point in time, I'm allowed to sort of hold my position. We're going to use the Cygor, of course, to fire away at these Blood Knights. We managed to pound it pretty hard with that hit from that. He's going to run in and deal some damage to the Gore Herd, but we're going to countercharge with the Gore Bull. And this is going to let us cause a little bit of damage to these guys and tangle them up a little while while we get ready to fling another rock at them with our Cygor. So let's see if we can peg the unit here. Boom. So, yeah, the arrow's coming in on it a little bit, dealing a little bit more. This is a good unit to whittle down just a little bit. Gorbals are going to come in and help against the Vargulfs, but we're going to also have some Ungor Spearmen just to help shy them away there. At this point in time, he's using Van Hel's Invocation, to bring these guys back to life. It's a good unit, they're high value, they're high priority, but he also hasn't really done much with them yet. At this point in time, we charge forward with our Beastmen. There's no point in us holding back necessarily too long, but there's also not a whole lot for what we're doing here. Ungor Raiders, eventually I'm going to have them switched over to these Vargulfs. My Ungor Spearmen are just sort of chasing after them for no good reason. He's got some direwolves way in the back there. There's not a whole lot I can do about that right now. But we're still plastering the Blood Knights, that's what I want to be killing. I love how the Gorbel running and charging into the Vargulf, it's kind of an even match. They both just sort of smash into each other and knock each other down. But yeah, our archers switch targets and start firing at these Vargulfs. Cause big damage really fast. We start bringing in Ungor Spearmen to tie them up a little bit, and this is going to work out pretty well. They're not actually the fastest at killing things like Ungor Raiders for some reason. They're doing fast enough, but like it's not really as immediate as you might expect under a lot of circumstances. Vlad and the Skeleton Warriors and the Crypt Ghouls combination, more than enough to get rid of my unit of warriors that start running there. And my unit is basically done for. We can replace it though with charging in a Gorbel. Over here, though, we've got our two Minotaurs. They're starting to wreck face quite a bit. My opponent, I think, is using Curse of Years on me, and Master of It's interesting. I don't think that actually applies to them. But, yeah, he's using quite a lot of abilities there to make my units quite poor, but I should still be able to push through in the end here. Two Minotaurs fighting things like Skeleton Spearmen and Skeleton Warriors. And Crypt Ghouls, that combination is very good, but is it enough? I don't think it is. Over here, of course, we've also got these Skeleton Spearmen fighting two units of Gors. Now, our Gorbel here is fighting off a bunch of Crypt Ghouls plus Vlad von Karstein. The problem with fighting off Vlad von Karstein is that he's got really, really tough statistics. A Gorbel can beat him, but he can't necessarily beat him when you're also being hit by Crypt Ghouls who have that poisonous attack, which can be really, really nasty. Skeleton Spearmen over here actually doing a really good job and end up beating my Gorbel. I did not know they could do that. Although he might be putting some heals on them, in which case that maybe is less unexpected. Giant Cygor has been charged by some direwolves here. That's not really, like, that's how you get rid of artillery, but he takes a little bit more than that. Dealt a ton of damage to these Vargulfs. I would love to finish that one off and then move on to this next one, but for now that's not just happening. This Corpse Cart with the Unholy Lodestone has been sitting here pretty effectively, and these things are really quite good. I didn't really have any answer to them that I could easily get past without doing pull-through, and you know how I feel about pull-through. While it's an effective strategy, it feels very stupid, so I don't do it, even though I probably should. This Vargulf, though, pretty much dead, I think. In any event, though, his general still pretty much full health, but this Gorbel over here is chopping his way through these Skeleton Warriors pretty effectively despite his low morale. But this Vargulf has made it free a little bit. Still fighting away, I guess, but hopefully we'll be able to kill it with these Ungor Raiders. I think they might be facing the wrong way or something, or they... No, they're firing. The rate of fire is just low or they're obstructed, but hopefully they'll finish off the stupid Vargulf here. He's being Invocation of Mihek, but I think he's at cap regeneration, so he can't get any more of it. These Warheards need to charge back in here, but they get interrupted by Vargulf. A couple of my units are chasing after that Vargulf, though. Yeah, it's really weird that my guys were not firing at this, but I think that they were counted as obstructed for some reason. Alright, he finally goes down. Next Vargulf we would love to fire at, but I don't think they end up firing at it. Usually, units of melee can be considered obstructed. It's just usually monstrous ones they'll still fire at anyway. In this case, I guess something's... Oh, no, there we go. We're getting a triple of arrows down. So that's good. That's what we were looking for. Gorbel over here is doing pretty well, but this one actually breaks against just the Skeleton Spearmen, which I thought was really strange. I thought that was very, very peculiar. Still, thinking we're in a pretty good place here. We've got some warriors rallying, coming in, fighting against these direwolves. Direwolves not really anything I'm too concerned about. These archers aren't firing anyway, so it's not like I'm too concerned about what they do. But these Minotaurs finally break free from that fight to a certain extent. Start fighting these Corpse Cart with the Unholy Lodestones. if we can get rid of them, that lowers the stats of all this stuff quite a bit. The Vorgolf over here did die from being surrounded and just a morale break. Yeah, we're hoping to get rid of these corpse carts at this point in time. His general is the only thing that's left that really concerns me, and he's charged himself into these sort of weaker units that are kind of on the verge of breaking. He probably needed to put him up against something that was much more crucial, but honestly, there's not a whole lot left that he can do at this point in the game. These units of Crypticals, for example, are pretty much out of things. I need to get my Cygor in melee mode so he's not chucking rocks into my own unit there, which he just wiped out. Don't even think he did any damage at all to Vlad von Karstein over there, but yeah, that's lovely. But we're still piling in against this corpse carts. We're going to charge it with the Cygor. Our Gorbel is still healthy enough that he could take out on Vlad von Karstein, deal pretty good damage to him, but at this point in time, it's just clean up because my opponent's morale has dropped down. So, yeah, I think Vampire counts just in this composition rule set because they're not allowed to take that many Graveguard. They're not allowed to take a lot of the things that they would normally like as the main bulk of their points consumption. They end up in a situation where they just can't play out the way they would normally like to. So that's the third match there. It was a pretty fun one, but anyway, I hope you found that one good. We're going to head right on to our fourth match. Okay, and we're in our final match here, and this is the full descent into lunacy of the theory that this is a good idea, but we've got 4 paladins, none of them have any abilities, and none of them have any mounts, and none of them have any potions. So these guys are actually kind of really, really cheap. They're like 500 points each. Our general does have a potion of toughness, and he's also on foot, but that's about as cheap as you can make your command structure while still staying below the 25%. And in fact, we're a decent chunk below 25%, about like 24.5% or something like that. But our front line, since we're up against Chaos, is 5 units of men-at-arms with polearms. We've got a couple of units of Knights of the Realm, 2 on this side, 1 on this side. We've also got 3 units of archers. We've got 2 more men-at-arms polearms in the back there. And of course, we've got the Pegasus Knights in this one. So I just wanted to see if we could stretch this as far as it could go, because this is what we sort of did last time. I think it's an effective strategy in the general sense, even though we didn't win with it the last time. I think that you can definitely make this function. At this point in time, I'm like, okay, well, actually, I forgot that this stupid thing's in the way, so I had to shift my line just a little bit, but not that much. Our opponent here has got some interesting stuff as well. He's got Kolak the Sun Eater, and he's got the Dragon Ogre, so he's gone the very opposite route. He's got one very expensive character, and he's got this Chaos Sorcerer with the Lore of Fire. And here he's got a Gore-Beast Chariot, and again, he's going to run it forward very, very aggressively very early on, rather than letting me sort of fire at him freely for as much as I would like to. Now, we do get some good shots off, though, into the Chaos Marauders here, and you can see them taking pretty hefty damage to their hit points right off the bat here, which is always a good thing if you can deal good hit point damage. We're also going to be hitting these Forsaken here, who are sort of following along, but we do get a miniature countercharge off with our Knights of the Realm into these Gore-Beast Chariot, preventing them from getting a free pull-through against my Halberds, and the Men-at-Arms polearms are great at dealing damage to these Gore-Beast Chariot if their charge is dulled, so this is going to work out kind of okay, other than the fact that our Knights are now getting swarmed with Chaos Marauders, Forsaken, and he's using his buffs in that area. So we've dealt some really good damage to these Chaos Marauders, we've done some really good damage to these Forsaken, but not a ton. This time I do have a reason that I can stand still. My opponent having no missile units doesn't really force me forward, so I don't have to countercharge him like I normally might in this sort of situation. And I get to break this unit of Axe Marauders for basically free. We charge all our Paladins into this unit of Men-at-Arms polearms, and we're going to charge a unit of Knights into these Gore-Beast Chariots, preventing him from pulling through my lines too badly. He does get a charge into the sides of my Peasant Bowmen, which is absolutely devastating, but we're going to probably be okay regardless. We got our Lord heading towards these Gore-Beast Chariots, and we've got a unit of Knights of the Realm slamming into them from the front. We've got another unit of Knights of the Realm. I just want them gone, and you need to focus quite a lot of hitting power on these sorts of Gore-Beast Chariots before they'll actually go away. Our 4 Paladins have basically busted straight through these unit of Forsaken here. We're going to see a Fire Vortex here as well, since I've got a lot of units pumped up. Does shatter his unit of, or break his unit of Chariots, but doesn't actually deal a huge amount of damage to me since a lot of my units are armored. The archers take quite a bit of damage, but that's relatively okay. Here we've got a bunch of units that have been freed up. but I don't necessarily want to charge all of them in at once. We have to look for spots in our line that might be broken through. Kolek coming in with his hammer, just charging into these units of halberds, which is not his best target, but it is a pretty good spot to be in, and he's punched through on this section of the line because he has got a lot of mass there. We're charging the Fire Wizard, he's been just supporting too much, don't want him to continue doing that for free. Chaos Warriors with halberds now engaged with my halberds and a general and a paladin who just sort of slipped in there. 3 paladins up against this unit of Chaos Marauders, they're going to pretty easily overmatch it. I think I ended up counter-charging this at the last second, so I do think that Kolek's Sun Eater is in a bit of trouble there, taking a lot of damage from my archers, as well as from those knights in their charge, but we're now getting caught by these Dragon Ogres as well as Chaos Warriors with halberds, so he's going to easily overpower my knights there. But over here, Chaos Warriors with halberds fighting against a couple of my halberd units. My halberd units actually do quite well in this situation, especially because it's 4 versus 2, so that's going to be more than he can handle. My general here, fighting more of these Chaos Warriors with halberds. Over here, I think we've just about cleared off this unit of Forsaken, and we did clear off that unit of Marauders. But he gets his charge through by knights, and they basically all retreat. Relatively okay health, they can come back in for another refocus and a breaking, but he does manage to charge a sort of murder ball towards my archers, and he does sort of break just at the last minute before he hits my second unit of archers, but these Dragon Ogres still do manage to make it into combat. So not the best situation for me here, but it's still going to be okay. I've got this third unit that can start firing at them if I need to. This unit of Halberdiers is broken, so we can sort of swing this unit back into the rear of this Chaos Warrior Halberd unit if I pay attention. Don't think I do in this case. General Paladin combo is starting to run amok a bit, but these 3 Paladins just slamming their way through these Halberd Warriors. And the thing is, Chaos can't really answer this in the proper way because they can't take 3 Exalted Heroes, which is kind of good because Exalted Heroes are stronger than Paladins. And they wouldn't want to anyway because the Exalted Heroes can't take potions, so that's probably the more important part of this. My opponent's getting a few units to rally, but my general is doing a good enough job fighting them. Over here, like, we did a good rear charge against these Chaos Warriors with halberds, and we're going to try and run away with our knights, keep them out of combat here, but it's these Dragon Ogres that I'm a little bit worried about, so we're going to pile in a couple more units of cavalry into them, as well as our halberds that are sort of loitering around. They're going to be able to deal some pretty good damage to these guys pretty quickly. And at that point in time, we do manage to win. So yeah, this is just the fullest extent of that weird cheese that I'm doing, except I've applied it also to a more normal army. I think that really helped me out in the end here, having a more normal army in terms of the balance of archers and melee infantry and cavalry, as opposed to before where it was a melee spam. I think that this is a much better mix. But yeah, anyway, I hope you found this one enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.